Disney's Snow White has been one of the most controversial movies for many years, with many a moviegoer actively rooting for it to fail. And they'll be glad to know it's not off to a good start on Rotten Tomatoes. That's quite the contrast from the early reactions though, which painted the movie as the best thing since sliced bread. And those overwhelmingly positive headlines are what travel the world, much more so than the later and much more mixed full reviews. So, how will the movie-going audience respond to this sudden whiplash? And how did Rachel Zegler screw up this time? Let's find out. There was a time, not too many years ago, when Disney CEO Bob Iger decided that Disney would go all in on diversity, equity, and inclusion in every aspect of the company's operations, from hiring practices to which stories could be told and how, and even which caterers could be used. If Iger did this because he had presidential aspirations at one point, or if he simply decided that these were the most important causes of our time, we can only speculate. But what we know for certain is that Snow White was developed under this regime. Problem was, the audience were never having it and rejected it big time, which meant Disney found themselves in a position where they had to pull out all the tricks in the book to manipulate the kind of press coverage they think will give the movie its best chance to overcome all the negative attention it is facing. We're about to break down their playbook. Before we get into the full reviews, let's begin with looking at these early reactions, for it was they that traveled the world. The Hollywood Reporter wrote, "Snow White first reactions praise remake. A big surprise. Rachel Zegler stuns." Disney held the LA premiere of its live-action reboot starring Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot on Saturday, and early reactions to the film say it's far better than anticipated, CGI dwarfs aside. The story proper reads, "The Snow White Backlash Brigade isn't going to like this." On Saturday, Disney held the Los Angeles premiere of its live-action reimagining of Snow White, and the first reactions from the screening are that the film, starring Rachel Zegler as the titular fairy tale character and Gal Gadot as the evil queen, is actually mostly successful according to one viewer, while several are praising Zegler, with one critic calling her stunning, despite the raging online controversy over the title. There's more, and we'll get back to that. But for now, note that no one from The Hollywood Reporter had actually seen the movie. They merely referenced the early reactions, and their reporting was picked up by countless other outlets worldwide. Variety wrote, "Snow White first reactions praise film as visual feast and one of Disney's best live-action remakes in years." Screen Rant said, "Forget the controversy. The first reactions to Rachel Zegler as Snow White should be no surprise after Spielberg's $76 million box office bomb. That box office bomb being a reference to West Side Story, which also featured Rachel Zegler." Here, however, referencing the early reactions, they say, "The reviews are saying that Zegler is an enchanting screen presence who perfectly captures the gentle grace of the OG Disney princess." Moving over to the other side of the Atlantic, British publication Metro said, "Surprising reactions to Disney's controversial Snow White remake as first reviews are in." The first reactions to Disney's controversial live-action remake of Snow White have landed, praising the film and its lead actress Rachel Zegler as enchanting and calling it one of the studio's best reimaginings in recent years. These first reactions travel the world, dominating the headlines everywhere, creating the impression that you can forget all about the controversy now. It was all over nothing, the movie is magical, and Rachel Zegler is Snow White. So get your tickets now before the Rotten Tomatoes score is up and ask further questions later. That's the playbook here. The manipulation is so obvious that even the industry trades which exist in unison with the studios had a hard time keeping a straight face. Let's see how Disney did it and get back to The Hollywood Reporter, which couldn't help themselves. After referencing the early reactions, they wrote, "Premiere reactions tend to come from fan bloggers and influencers and typically skew more positive than formal critic reviews, of which Snow White had suspiciously few so far." Suspiciously few, huh? Suspiciously few formal critic reviews to balance out the specifically invited social media influencers. Recall how Amazon employed a cadre of influencers to sell Lord of the Rings of Power as the best thing since sliced bread, because they all felt so seen and validated and represented by it. And then, months after the fact, half of them admitted that they never even bothered seeing all the episodes. That apparently wasn't part of the contract for that particular influencer gig, because as we've already seen, before the actual reviews hit, it's all about setting the narrative, create catching headlines about what an unexpectedly great movie this is. And then hopefully, people will remember that and not pay too close attention to later reviews. In that limited time frame before the actual reviews hit, it's all about influencing opinion. We actually referenced this in our previous video on Snow White, where we covered British outlet The Daily Mail, and their exposé on how much smaller and more tightly controlled PR events were replacing the regular press events and screenings, all of which Disney had cancelled. Let's look at a snippet from that reporting. The scaled-back European event replaced the glitzy London premiere that had been expected for the high-budget release. An LA event is also said to have been scaled back. Earlier this month, an insider told the Mail, Disney are already anticipating an anti-woke backlash against Snow White and have reduced the media schedule to just a handful of tightly controlled press events. That right there shows that not only does Disney not have any faith in their star, they also don't have any faith in the movie itself, because if they did, they would have more publicity events with a wider range of attending journalists. As it is, it's just a single-digit number of small-scale events, with hand-picked journalists and influencers, ensuring that Disney can control at least some seed articles that they hope the rest of the entertainment media complex will pick up on. Indeed, the article confirms this, saying, "Later this week, the cast will return to the States, with Zegler and Gadit expected to attend a pre-party and screening at LA's El Capitan Theater on March 15th, where coverage will be limited to photographers and a house crew." Disney is leaning towards having influencers to interview Rachel and Gal for promotion days on Sunday and Monday, an industry insider told Page 6. They want to concentrate on the content. And here we have some of that content. Like this video of Rachel Zegler interacting with little girls dressed up in the exact same matching Snow White costumes. And not a single one of them show any kind of excitement about meeting her, because none of them has any idea who she is. And probably not Snow White either, for that matter. Events that are this tightly staged and controlled can sometimes veer into the cringy side, and other PR stunts can also backfire, like one just did. In another highly coordinated PR stunt, Rachel Zegler made a tribute to original Snow White actress Adriana Caselotti and the original movie. Problem was, this wasn't received well, because everyone remembers how Zegler in the past has actively trashed the original movie and accused it of being weird and dated, so this about-face didn't fool anyone, and the social media backlash was as swift as it was brutal. That, however, was just in social media, as were the viral pictures of her back. What is more likely to influence the casual moviegoers are big headlines in the news about how this movie is much better than anyone expected it to be, at least until the full reviews hit. The first batch of full reviews hit on Wednesday, March 19th. And countless more will be dropped over the next few days. As expected, these full reviews are much more measured in their praise than were the early response from the hand-picked influencers. How measured, you wonder? Well, firmly into rotten territory. That's how measured. That is, after all, what all this influencing and early positive press coverage is all about. So as many as possible will decide to see the movie before the dreaded Rotten Tomatoes score changes anyone's minds. Still, just based on the first batch of full reviews, there is every reason to think that many will be divided in their opinion of this movie. One of the general trends in these full reviews is that Rachel Zegler is a pleasant surprise, probably in part because she lowered expectations a great deal with her public antics, while the rest of the movie surrounding her is a bit more hit or miss. Here, I certainly see indications that, like both Wicked and Barbie before, different viewers and reviewers are going to have very different responses to the exact same thing. Some will genuinely like it, others not so much. That will surely spark debate, but the big question for Disney is, will that spark the box office? The opening weekend tracking figures suggest an opening barely over 50 million, with the lower-end estimates dipping into the 40s, which for a movie with a budget like this, that has even been subject to extensive delays and reshoots, fits firmly into disaster territory. So, will enough of the mostly female target audience like it sufficiently well to spread positive word of mouth and bring it up to the upper end of the estimates? Or will those predisposed to disliking it take the box office prospects down? Also, do you think the early influencer-driven positive press helped, or will it not matter in the end? Let me know in the comments.